This episode of the Linux Action Show is brought to you by DigitalOcean and by Ting. Go to last.ting.com and save $25 off your first device or your first month of service. Welcome to the Linux Action Show, episode 334. My name is Chris.
My name is Matt.
Hey, Matt. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Are you ready for me to tell everyone about the big show today?
Definitely.
All right, well, coming up on this week's episode of the Linux Action Show, how well does an Intel NUC actually work as a home server? Well, I just tried it, and I ran into a few problems, some shortcomings, but also some major strengths. So I'll cover all of that later on in the show. Plus, then I had the big challenge of moving my Plex, BitTorrent Sync, SmokePing, SabNZB, and a bunch of other things over to this new NUC. And it wasn't just a matter of moving all the settings and not losing any data, but also moving them between distributions. In that process, I came up with a crazy great way to deploy SmokePing on Arch that'll get you up and running in minutes instead of hours like the standard Arch wiki has you go through. So we're going to cover all of that in today's episode and some of my experiences of trying Open Media Vault on the NUC.
Nice.
And why I ended up not going with Open Media Vault on the NUC.
Oh, that didn't work out, huh?
No. And so I'll tell you about that later on in the show. Plus, in the news segment, brand new version of the Linux kernel is out. We don't always cover every single release, but this one's a big one. And we'll tell you about some of the awesome features in the new kernel 3.17. Plus, your DRM-laden media is now available to Chrome, and there's some major improvements coming to Linux drivers, including some actual official word on Wayland and Mir support from Nvidia.
Nice.
And Firefox OS is continuing to show growth. We'll give you details on that. And then in the feedback segment, we got an experiment. It may or may not work. We'll find out when we get there, but we're going to try to do a live hangout and do feedback, a live Q&A feedback using Google Hangouts.
We'll cross our fingers.
We'll see. Yeah, if it doesn't work out, we'll just, who knows? Maybe you'll just see us twiddling our thumbs and be like, well, that was a fail. We'll find out.
Error controller.
But first, Matt, it is our picks. And our Runs Linux pick this week, I started getting emails about this a couple of weeks ago.
Did you? Okay.
And I was like, I don't know. This sounds like a TV show that makes cyber terrorism the big bad guy. And
surprisingly, it doesn't. But, yeah.
Right. So then I caught that you actually watch this show.
Yeah, I do. What I found...
So then I thought, okay, let's talk about this a little bit. So it's Scorpion, right?
It's Scorpion.
And what's it about?
Well, what I liked about it is it has its own plot, and each episode is kind of the whole thing, but they're kind of like a geeky A-team, except it's more like season 3 to where they're working for the government at that point. So it's a little more in that vicinity. But what I liked about it is that I felt like they were actually dispelling more myths than they were actually acknowledging.
Oh, I like that.
So
all right. Well, it looks fun. So I have a clip. If audience watch closely, if you watch very closely, you'll see the Runs Linux. Here we go. Scorpion Runs Linux.
Line 2, please.
Major Gallo, Homeland Security. I need to commandeer your diner for a national emergency.
I'm hacking into airport security. I'm going to rotate your cameras to point at the monitors.
I'm not comfortable with you hacking into anything at this airport.
Then don't make it so easy. And 20...
Boom, there it is right there. If you look closely, the subreddit believes that is Kali Linux there on his machine. Right. So not only is he kind of on a nice rig, he's got a beefy Alienware gaming rig, but he's running Kali Linux when he's doing his hacking. And
he's also running a nondescript Ultrabook, which is his actual go-to computer. Instead of running the usual Macs you see on TV, he's actually running something that's very nondescript.
It's just kind of, you do see the Samsung logo right there in the shot. They could have put tape over that.
They don't make a big deal about it, though. It's not like the Mac to where the logo's like in your face constantly.
Well, and the thing is like I could see him using this equipment. Now, it's obviously been doctored up to make it look, but the fact that it's not just like generic Linux, but the subreddit believes it's Kali Linux, to me, Kali is a penetration testing distribution, which would be something you might use for a job like this. That at least I was like, okay, that gives them a little cred. And then knowing that you watched it, I was like, all right, we're going to make this to run Linux. So thank you to everybody who sent this one in. And from all of the emails, I remembered hearing that there was actually video of it. So there it is. Here, I'll play just because it goes by so quick. Here's him hacking using Linux.
At this airport.
Then don't make it so easy. In 20 minutes, the last remaining usable software will be corrupted. Happy Toby, get to the server and get me that backup disk.
We have less than a minute. Which one is it?
This guy, he's the boss. Look at his belt tail. He's a lefty, so we eliminate the right side servers.
100 servers left, 10 seconds.
He's what, 5, 6 top?
So you get it. You
get the whole thing. And there's other events that happen throughout the thing.
I kind of want to watch that now.
Now, to be fair, I want to warn you guys. I'm not saying that the events are realistic.
You got to turn your brain off a little bit.
They're completely overreal. They're ridiculous. They're ridiculous.
It's TV.
But it's fun. It's a fun show. They're hyping up geeks. Anytime they do that, it's good. It's mindless entertainment.
Yeah, at least the geeks aren't a bunch of goobers.
Exactly. It's not Big Bang Theory.
And they're running Linux. I like that too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank
it's
you.
fun.
You said it, not me, but I agree.
I like the show. I like Big Bang Theory, but it is a little over ridiculous. This is just more.
It's a parody.
This is more action and nonsense. It's fun.
Chat room says they like it.
I enjoy it. It wants you to, if you're trying to look for realism, just turn your TV off and go outside. That's all I got for you.
And,
I'm sorry.
And it's not the bad guys using Linux in this case. Exactly. It's the good guys using Linux. Which is cool.
Again, it's hyping. It's saying, hey, you can be cool by being a geek. That's what I took away from the show, and I enjoyed that.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll tell you about something I enjoyed. That's our first sponsor this week, DigitalOcean. Head over to DigitalOcean.com. Why? Because DigitalOcean is a simple cloud hosting provider dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way to spin up your own cloud server. There's a lot of things I'm going to talk about in today's episode, and a lot of them could be easily replicated on a DigitalOcean droplet. Some of them would have a lot of advantages to doing so, like BitTorrent Sync or OwnCloud. Why not put that up on a DigitalOcean droplet that you have root access to, that you can implement encryption if you want to, audit and log, so that way you have full knowledge of what's happening on that box. And users can start a cloud server up in probably less than 55 seconds. Their pricing plan started at only $5 per month. That'll get you 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, one CPU, and a terabyte of transfer. A terabyte of transfer for $5 a month.
That's ridiculous.
And they have DigitalOcean has data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, and London. Brand new one, really nice one in London. You can see some pictures on their Instagram feed. And their interface is really great. It's simple, but yet it's extremely powerful. And what blows my mind as a former sysadmin is I've never seen a management interface that was so easy to use to manage KVM virtual machines across data centers all over the world. And then to also be able to deploy applications inside those droplets. If the management of the droplets wasn't incredible enough through DigitalOcean's interface, the ability to deploy software using the entire Docker stack and things like that, it's amazing. It really is great, and power users can replicate the functionality of that dashboard using DigitalOcean's straightforward API. There's Python interfaces, Ruby, there's already applets for Ubuntu and Mac OS. There's a lot of ways you can take advantage of their API. But DigitalOcean is now, so they've already been ahead of the curve because they've got these data centers, they've got the tier 1 bandwidth, they recognize that SSD will give them the I/O density that'll make them extremely competitive. KVM and Linux and all of that has given them the leverage to have the pricing at an incredible value. But there's a component that DigitalOcean now, I think, really wants to focus on, something they really want to curate, and that's their community tutorials. I think DigitalOcean wants to be sort of the standout provider here, and here's why I say that. DigitalOcean is now willing to pay authors up to $200 for their technical tutorials. So if there's something you've deployed on a DigitalOcean droplet that the community could benefit from having a tutorial, and you feel capable of writing that up, and DigitalOcean, by the way, will work with you to make sure this tutorial can be, they'll like provide editorial assistance to make sure it can be published up on the site, and they'll pay you for it because they value really good work, and they want these to be standout tutorials. So you can go over to DigitalOcean's community website, and I'll have a link in the show notes as well. It's digitalocean.com/community/get-paid-to-write, paid to write, essentially. Dashes between the words. And you can learn more about the program there. So if you have something you are an expert in, and you want to make a little extra cash, it could be something you already had to set up anyways for DigitalOcean. Check them out. This is a great opportunity to make up to $200 in cash.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I used to do this for another company. They're not a server company. They're a service company called OpenLogic, and it was great. And what's nice about this is that when they come back, they'll actually say, okay, can you accent this one thing, explain that. The editorial assistance makes this doable for pretty much anyone. If you have the know-how, don't sweat it. They'll probably work with you just fine.
Totally.
Go for it.
And don't forget, when you're over there, use the promo code LASOctober, LAS October, to get a $10 credit on your DigitalOcean droplet. If you get the $5 rig, you can run that for 2 months for absolutely free. It's a great opportunity to try out some of the stuff we're going to talk about in today's show. Set up your own cloud or GitLab instance, maybe something else like Core OS. Try it out. Just use the promo code LASOctober and try it for 2 months for absolutely free. They won't bill your credit card afterwards. You pre-charge your DigitalOcean account, and then and then you don't have to worry. Like if your credits expire and you decide you don't like it, don't worry. It's not an auto renewal thing. They'll just send you an email, and then they'll pause your virtual machines. I think I've never actually had my account run out.
I had mine run out for a little bit. It was only a couple bucks over, and I didn't even know it until I went and checked. I was like, oh, I gotta add a few bucks.
They give you like a pretty pretty gracious grace period.
Well, and what was cool is even despite that, the options for like transferring my droplet to another customer was still optional. despite
isn't
owing
that
the money.
cool? That is also something we don't talk about very much, but a very cool feature. I love that. And if you're thinking about setting it up for a client, you could set it up and then transfer it to them and bill them and just boom, it's theirs. And then they pay the monthly. You could charge them a one-time setup fee.
Because I think in comparison to a lot of other services, that's a real differentiator.
Yeah. All right. So I had something kind of you could use this for nefarious purposes. Today's desktop pick, but I want to say consider using this for either educational, but also I know we have a lot of network admins out there.
Oh yeah.
Some of you probably run some of the conferences, these Linux events. I bet a lot of you out there that are watching do, and you've probably been in the situation where a lot of people are on your network and bandwidth is super tight, and then some jerk comes along. I've definitely, when I was working at the school district, had this problem where some jerk comes along, fires up their laptop, uTorrent like auto resumes in the background, and they just start pulling down and seeding like a crazy man, and it saturates your Wi-Fi. It totally makes your Wi-Fi useless. Well, this was pointed out by the subreddit, so a big thank you to the folks there. It came in from Miker89. He says, hey, Chris and Matt, I thought I'd share this cool program. It's called BitHammer, if you haven't already heard of it. If you haven't, BitHammer searches out and bans BitTorrent users on your local subnet. That means if you travel, like, say, to Ohio Linux Fest, often using shared Wi-Fi. This is nice because many people have been plagued by rogue BitTorrent users who have crept onto public hotspots, either with a stolen or cracked password, or who lie about it. And so he links us to the GitHub page here, and it really is that. BitHammer, he says, the author, it's for research purposes only, and you have to get permission from your network admin, and the Linux Action Show backs both of those statements up very strongly.
Yes.
But let's say a hypothetical scenario. Rekai's up there torrenting a bunch of stuff right now while we're doing a live show. I could use BitHammer to go down there and sort of shut that down and sort of claw back some bandwidth so that way our live stream would continue on.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, so obviously with great power becomes great responsibility. And you need some Python, you need some Git.
And or you have young people in the house that think that BitTorrent can just be used over any network.
You know what I'm saying, Matt.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying. So that's BitHammer, and it's on GitHub if you want to search for it, or we'll just have a link in the show notes. And thanks to Miker89 for submitting that one.
That was
it
really
didn't get a lot of traction in the subreddit. But
I think it's because they need a lot of times
you need a use for it. But I think those of you who do have a use for it will find that very useful. Does that make sense?
I think so. And I think so. If you do some Googling around, you probably find a YouTube video that actually kind of shows it in action. And that's when I think it really solidifies with people, is seeing it.
Yeah, the chat room says, can you make sure that our ISPs never get a hold of this? I think they already have something kind of like this. I'm sorry, man.
There's an I'm not even going to go there.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Let's just put it that way.
Okay, our weekly spotlight pick, and this will be our last pick. It was almost our Runs Linux, but it's not a proven Kickstarter yet, so I don't. Okay. I like to make sure that it's approved most of the time. It's a weird rule I have. I don't know, but I want to talk about it anyways because it's this cool idea. It's a pocket-sized mobile touchscreen web server that runs Tizen. So it runs Linux. Yeah, I know. Is that a lot for your brain or what?
Wow,
it's called. Here's a picture of it. It's called The Egg. It's going to be about $200 US. It's going to have 64 gigabytes of storage. Early shipping in 2015. It's billed as a personal web server and a way to cut the cord on social networking sites that sell your information. It's all about sort of reclaiming your information. It's developed by former engineers from Intel and DivX and elsewhere. It's notable for its 2.4-inch 320 by 240 pixel capacitive touchscreen. It's a battery-powered web server, and it's one of the few non-Samsung devices running Tizen. It has a 2 gigahertz Intel Atom chip, which is a Bay Trail chip. It has 1 gigabyte of RAM, and you can get it in 64, 128, or 250 gigabytes of eMMC storage. It has a 910 milliamp battery, USB 2.0, lasts about 10 to 12 hours. And the idea is you take it with you, and it acts as a Wi-Fi access point, letting your Wi-Fi enabled smartphone and other things share content with the Egg as you go around. So instead of posting like to Instagram, you would post to the Egg as you move around.
Now I can better understand the case.
It's using PHP and JavaScript for and SQLite for the interface to power the interface. I got a little video for you. Do you want to see it?
Yeah.
It's on Kickstarter right now. It's got 55 backers. They have a goal of $500,000.
They're going to need media.
They're at 11,000 right now with 24 days to go. Here's a video where they talk about. Now remember, this is a Linux-powered device. It's really what they're trying to do is get you to stop pumping your information into all these different services, but still give you some of the features.
Hi, I'm Barry, and this is Thomas.
Hi.
Hi.
We're here to tell you about a product that a group of us have built. A while back, we started noticing that cloud companies are using our personal content, yours and ours, in ways that we don't approve of. They are doing this because they can and because we clicked accept when we first set up our accounts with them. We don't think this is right, and we found that most of you agree with us. We also realized that they could get away with this because we don't have a choice but to take it or leave it. So a group of us set about to change this. We started with the goal of giving you, the user, control of your content where it is unmistakably yours and not theirs, and where you can still share it along with your thoughts without having to rely on the intrusive cloud services. We wanted to create something that is beautiful and that you would want to show off. Our work over the last year has resulted in this. We call it the egg.
Okay.
It is your personal server as opposed to their cloud servers. And you can carry it with you because it fits into your pocket or purse.
Well, it fits in my purse.
Once connected to the internet, the egg is accessible from anywhere in the world via a unique domain name that you select. You can share any personal content on your egg website, either with the whole world or with only those people that you want. Here's a quick look at some of the things the egg can do.
All right, we'll see this and then we'll wrap it up.
The egg automatically gathers and syncs all of your photos.
So it pulls down photos.
From your phone, camera,
so it's like it acts as okay. Well, so here's a couple of things a couple of issues that are jumping out at me. Is it sounds like there's still their services involved, so I still have to trust them, and maybe they address that on the Kickstarter page. But the idea here is this thing publishes to some of the social networks for you, or you could share directly from this and just give people a URL. But that never really works that well, in my experience.
You know, first of all, lose the publish to other services because I think that's, I think that actually takes away from their point. In this particular case.
Here we go.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Sorry, they thought they were talking about the open source stuff. Yeah. So okay, I agree with you there.
Yeah, because then it does kind of say, well, then what the hell's the point? It's kind of like, I mean, you could just make Facebook private, right? I mean, that's kind of that's how people's interpretation of it is.
Right.
In fact, I do get what they're saying. I do understand that. In fact, it could be actually private, and it's not, being stored on their servers and whatnot.
I don't know for me,
but it's in the transit data. I think is where people are going to have questions.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so data's in transit. Is that in fact, if it's running through the service, doesn't it then in fact touch their services?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
And the other thing is too, if it's a small portable device, it seems like you'd be more likely to lose it than you'd lose all your stuff.
Oh yeah. And is it password protected? What's the security look like on that?
I almost prefer to have something in my house more like a home server.
I think they're taking the appliance approach, and especially at a low cost, and I recommend it. But they're marketing it to people that aren't going to care. They need to market it to my mom, who's like, I don't want to use Facebook.
So here's what I do like though. I like the idea of pushing the conversation forward about how these companies are monetizing our data, and I think our personal data is worth way more money than we currently consider it to be, because they've just sort of creeped us into this like the boiling frog kind of thing. And I think I like that these types of initiatives are sort of re-sparking that conversation and making us have the discussion, what is the value of our data? Is it worth me buying something so that way my data is under my control? It starts putting a price tag on your data. That's an interesting thing. Number two, the thing I like about it is the message here is, well, if you really want to be able to trust it, you got to go Linux. You got to go open source.
Yeah. Oh,
and
absolutely.
That's the undercurrent here that I also think is a really positive one. And I like that in this sort of paranoia that some of us now have, that it's sort of become the immediate follow-up answer is, well, the solution is open source and Linux.
Well, and at the end of the day, it feels like Pogo Plug. I mean, that's really what it feels like to me. It feels like it's essentially a Pogo Plug with social media side benefits. And that's cool, but again, it's touching another service, even if it's being stored locally or not. I
agree.
I think if it was me, I would remove all this other social crap. Keep it on the egg itself, and saying, look, if you just want to share with your family, you want to share with your friends.
You probably just not connect it.
Yeah, but they need to emphasize that, and they need to really, kind of go that direction. Another point someone else in the chat room brought up is, how cool would it be to have like a own cloud on an egg?
Yeah.
That would be, that's great, because then Mom and Pa Kettle can be like, oh, hey, I can have Google Docs in my pocket.
Yeah, I think that
that's cool.
I think that's
just my thought.
Yeah. Hey, real quick before we run, 9 hours left on the Linux Action Show fall jacket that got reopened. The campaign restarted. Now there's been 100 sales. And I know some of you, it just didn't work payday-wise. Like, it just didn't work as far as your expendable income went. And now it has. And so they've relaunched it. And so 100 of you have grabbed it. I know, incredible. And 9 hours left, so I'm just mentioning here at the top of the show because probably for the majority of you by the time you're listening or watching, it's already gone. But if you're curious, you want to grab one, we've got dark blue, black, gray, and rockin' red, teespring.com/jbjacket. I mean, you don't want to be cold, right?
No, and you want to look cool, but you want to be stealth about it. And this has got the perfect package for you. You got the, you got the breast pocket.
I don't know. I don't know if you order now if it'll make it in time for Ohio Linux Fest. It might. It might. I think we might have I think one of
that
our.
Would be cool.
Yeah, somebody around here has a gray one. I haven't gotten mine yet, but somebody around here does. And the gray one, I really liked the gray.
Yeah.
So that's again teespring.com/jbjacket. And thanks to everybody who's grabbed one so far.
Nice.
All right, Matt. Let's do the news.
Hey, it's the news, and this episode is brought to you by
Ting.com. Matt, Ting is mobile that makes sense. Ting is my mobile service provider, and I'm rocking the Nexus 5 now with Android L like a boss. Let me tell you something. If you have thought about switching to Ting, but you haven't made the move yet, I think now is the time. An Android L on this phone is unbelievable. This Nexus 5,
he's been going on about it. He's loving it.
I know, I have. But I've been seeing the rumors of what the next Nexus phone's going to be like, and it's too big. It's like 5.9-inch screen.
It's like long. Oh, okay.
It's huge. It's bigger than the Note. It's bigger than the new iPhone 6 Plus. And so I'm thinking Nexus 5 with Android L, it feels like a brand new phone. It's faster. My battery life is better. And when I'm on Ting, I'm only paying for what I use. Ting just takes my minutes, my messages, and my megabytes. They add them all up, whatever bucket I fall into, that's all I pay. And it's a flat $6 for the line. Easy peasy. So I've got 3 lines right now on Ting. I got the Nexus 5, I got an iPhone 5, and I've got an HTC One, and I'm paying like $40-something a month, and that's with some decent usage, too.
That's like all the phones, none of the bill. I mean, that's
Get
great.
in on it. Last.ting.com. They'll take $25 off your first device. Last.ting.com will also give you a $25 credit if you've got a Ting-compatible device you're just going to bring with you. And then you're gonna get in there with a $25 credit on your bill. That might last you like for your first month. And I've been using L on a Ting, and I've been using F-Droid for my App Store. So I'm all in. I don't have any of the Play stuff logged in or turned on.
Wow.
So I'm getting incredible battery life. I'm using the open source stuff on the phone. It's been a great experience because now I'm not in a contract because Ting has no contract.
Right.
So I have no early termination fee. I'm only paying for what I use. I'm using Android L, which is the best version of Android yet. I'm using F-Droid, so that way I'm not all hooked into the Play services. I'm starting to come to something that I like a lot, and Ting is the key part of all of that. And of course, there's always great apps you can pick from on Android too. You can have any Android device that Ting has. They're all fantastic. Matt's got the Note.
Yep. And they keep expanding their network. It's like I'm more and more amazed at where you're getting signal. That's like, oh wow.
There's been major investments on the wireless network, major millions and millions of dollars. And right now Ting has a warehouse sale where they're moving to a larger warehouse, and they're like, we would seriously rather sell this stuff than have to move it. And this is a great deal. Look at this.
Oh, this is a good opportunity.
The Sierra 4G LT hotspot, $63. Ooh. No contract. Oh, and then you just pay for the data you use. So if you need a hotspot you can turn on from time to time.
Right.
This is it right here. Go to last.ting.com. You can get the Sierra 4G LT hotspot for $63. But guess what? It's going to come with a $20 Ting credit. They're also, with all this warehouse stuff, a $20 Ting credit. So when you're only paying for the data usage and you only pay for what you use, that is a phenomenal deal right now. You can go to last.ting.com and then go to their blog for more information. They've also got a feature phone you can grab for really great price. Again, no contract. And they've got some other phones on there right now for their warehouse sale, as well as all the flagship phones you've come to expect. And you can get any of them over at last.ting.com. Go check out the warehouse sale. Matt, before we run, let's do our app pick of the week. Are you ready, sir? Kyra's here to rock it for us.
Woo! Let's scrub our respective clouds clean. I'm Kyra, and this is Ting's app of the week.
Let's go. Woo!
Unclouded analyzes your cloud storage and displays all your files in a simple interface. With useful sorting options, you can easily understand what's clogging up your cloud storage. You can connect all of your Dropbox and Google Drive accounts with Unclouded. Support for OneDrive and Box is on the way. Instantly swap between accounts using the arrow in the left panel. The overview page is exactly that. You get a summary of your used space versus total space and your usage in Google Apps, like Gmail or Google Plus Photos. Explorer works like a file explorer, listing your files and folders inside a directory. It displays the total file and folder size, as well as the percentage in comparison to your total storage used. Category sorts by file type, like videos, audio, images, and documents. You can also check out recently modified files and automatically locate duplicates. The free version gives you insights-only access, leaving you to manually clean up any messes the app finds. To enable editing options, such as deleting, sharing, and moving files, you have to purchase the premium version for $199. Unclouded is available on Android and iOS. Both links are in the description below. Thanks for watching our App of the Week, and make sure to subscribe to our channel.
Ting posts that over on their blog as well as the warehouse sale information. So go to last.ting.com to get started. Take $25 off your first Ting device. And a huge thank you to Ting for sponsoring the Linux Action Show.
Woohoo! Good stuff.
Okay, Matt, it's time to celebrate because our first news story is something that eventually all Linux users get to benefit from. It's not like one distro additive feature.
Right.
Everybody eventually gets this. Linux version 3.17 has been released by the great Linus Torvalds. All hail Linus. Actually, people weren't quite sure what the release schedule is going to be because he's got a very busy travel schedule right now. But 3.17 is a big improvement, and it brings a great new batch of features. Radeon R9 290 support, Xbox One support, sans Rumble. DMA BOF cross-device synchronization, a lot of ARM hardware improvements, some Toshiba hardware improvements, Intel Braswell, and Cherry Trail enablement is already in there.
Wow.
Those chips aren't even on the market until next year.
That's some Zen stuff. But remember, Linux has terrible hardware support. I want to really...
Right. We've already got the enablements for hardware that's not even shipped yet by Intel.
Boom.
And that's what's amazing when the vendor participates right there, right? And Fronics did a great job of busting out the coverage on this. He breaks out some of the things you can see in there if you're more curious about it, including he specifically outlined some of the ARM improvements, if that's something, and the Toshiba laptop.
That's a big one.
Yeah. It's a great article, actually. I like to see it when he digs into this kind of stuff. So a link to that in the show notes. Kernel 3.17. I don't know. It could be one of those, if you're an AMD user, it might be worth the update. Especially,
very well could be.
Yeah. Especially some other things we're gonna talk about here in just a minute. But all right. So the story that every single distro had to write a blog post about, every Linux news site had to talk about, even though it feels like it's been here for weeks. But Netflix now officially works on Linux, no change and nothing required. You just go there with the latest version of Chrome, and Netflix works.
Yeah, and it really does. I mean, it truly is that simple.
Yeah.
If you can install Chrome, you can watch Netflix.
Were you surprised by what a big freaking deal this was for everybody? Like, Google Plus, for the day that this happened, that's all that Google Plus had. That's all I saw in my feed. It was on all of the subreddits 3 or 4 times. It was on Hacker News. It was on Engadget.
I'm not surprised in that. I think people really wanted to be able to watch this stuff on their computers. A lot of folks have dual monitor. They want to watch Netflix while they're doing their work. And I find myself being one of those people. So I definitely get that. As far as making it that big of a deal, I don't know. I feel like that it's kind of a win. It's kind of a way of saying we're legitimate now. See, it's not just gaming, but we also can do
here's what I wanted to ask you: are Linux users just all in on DRM now, like on average, like with Steam and now, like how excited everyone seems to be over Netflix? Like, it's now that it's arrived. To be honest with you, I'm a little, I don't want to say like bummed, but I'm just a little like, oh, okay, well, great. Now we have one more thing that is sort of wrapped up in this crap that.
I don't think opinions ever changed. I think those that are against it are still very much against it, and will, all 10 of them will continue to protest. And then the other 99% of the population that just wants to get things done, if they want to use it, they will, and if they feel strongly enough about not wanting to use it, they won't. But I don't think anything really changed in that regard.
Producer Q5 points out, which is always a good point to remember, is it's really also about meeting expectations of new Linux switchers that come here and just expect something like that to work. I come back to this point. I'm not a huge fan of the DRM, of anything like that. But fundamentally, what it comes down to for me is I just don't value this stuff very much. Like, the Netflix original series, House of Cards, I think is a great show. I've watched both seasons. I really enjoyed it. I also don't care that much about it. Like, if I never was able to have it again, I would be fine. I'm not so emotionally unbalanced that I would be at a loss. Now, where I get a little emotionally unbalanced is when it comes to things like Star Trek or things where my children watch it over and over and over and over and over again, like Curious George. Then I start to get particularly worried when somebody has control over it. I've been on Netflix where there's been a series my kids have loved, and then just one day 2 or 3 of the seasons are just gone, and only season 1 or 2 are left, and now they can no longer see anything after season 2.
Right.
And it's this weird, like, whoa, what, wait a minute, I thought I was paying for that. And so that's the kind of stuff when that happens, then I say I am going to decide not to participate in the DRM scheme.
And that's a healthy approach. And I think that's the healthy approach is that, it's like, oh, hey, wow, I wasn't aware of the fact that they do rotate content in and out, and I don't find that model appealing to myself anymore. That's not something that's for me. That's great. I mean, I totally support that. For myself personally, I get enough value out of it with the rotating documentaries and just a variety of things like that. There's a lot of content discovery I enjoy, including the original series, mostly the documentaries.
Yeah, and I have the same exact philosophy with Steam games. I like my Steam games. Obviously, I feel they're worth the value I pay for them, but if Valve went bankrupt tomorrow and I lost access, I'd be pretty butthurt about it. I'd be upset about that, but I wouldn't. It wouldn't be like that's the deal that I'm accepting.
Yeah, exactly.
And because that stuff doesn't matter as much to me.
Exactly. And another great example that is, in some cases, I forget exactly how many years ago it was. I think it was just a year ago. Kindle had an issue to where some books were suddenly disappearing.
1984.
Yeah.
Actually,
it was,
remember?
Yeah, it was 1984 disappearing, oddly enough. Disappearing off people's Kindles. And that's not a very fun feeling. Yet I still buy Kindle books. So,
Well, and today's episode, the main topic we're going to get to is really about giving you the flexibility and options to choose the DRM-free route when you want, if it fits your needs. I don't want to get too into specifics, but we're going to talk about some stuff that allows you to not necessarily participate in the DRM for some things.
One last thing I want to point out. Well, I don't support DRM. I buy all my stuff on DVDs. Dude, I hate to be the one to tell you that. It's got DRM on it. And let me tell you, if I had $1 for every time I had a Blu-ray didn't play on a firmware upgraded Blu-ray player, I'd shoot myself. I hate it.
Or like my drive in the I have a drive and sometimes some discs just don't read.
Yeah, I mean I would sooner just rip the disc. It's just easier.
Yep. Make MKV.
Yep.
All right. So let's go to this next topic that had our chat room all fired up during the pre-show. People are really upset about this and we'll talk about it for a sec. So the developers of Chrome OS have decided to drop extended 2, 3, and 4 support from Chrome OS. Here's the post. Project member posted, "Let's drop support for extended 2, 3, and 4. Unnecessary features like this make it difficult to implement a feature that matters."
No.
And and so essentially everybody kind of chimes in. Yeah, that seems good. Last time I checked, the usage is low. We felt it would be diminishing because all of the Greensboro reports are now zip files. He says, I'm fine. And this is really like in the SD cards. When you add a SD card, people have had some issues. And so this isn't... I don't think this is... I don't think this is Google removing extended 2, 3, and 4 support from the kernel. I think it's them removing it from the file manager layer that they've bolted onto Chrome to make it a OS that has local drive support because it's a browser.
Right.
But
still,
let's talk about this because what it does is it means you only FAT32 and NTFS if you have an SD card. So, and we just saw reports, millions of Chromebooks selling, massively successful in education. It's the new generation of Linux users, except you can't use the native Linux file system.
Yeah, see that I have a problem with that. You want to remove, those file systems. That's fine. Make sure to remove NTFS as well, because that's only fair. I'm just saying. You want to keep FAT32. That's fine. Everybody and their mother uses it on flash drives. I don't care. But don't, But when it comes to SD cards, that gets a little fuzzier.
I hate NTFS.
It's just an ugly file system.
I hate FAT32 as well. I wonder. I mean, okay, so it really looks like it just comes down to the hassle of maintaining support in their file manager is too much.
I find that really weak, but whatever. I honestly, yet Linux distros across the world seem to manage to do it just fine. So I don't understand why it's that big of a challenge.
But heads up, and since Chrome is auto updating, I'm sure it'll just roll out to a distro. It'll
be a feature they'll take away from you.
That'll be not an upgrade.
Yeah.
No, it'll be an automatic downgrade. Exactly what RMS... actually, this is exactly what RMS warned us about.
Proprietary software is not ethical.
He points out that software that can auto-update can also auto-lock down the user and remove features.
That's completely accurate. And I think that educational perspective is important, but it still allows... I have no problem with people knowing about it. I have a problem when it becomes black and white to where, I'm going to take that choice away from you. That's when I really get a burr up my butt.
Yeah, because it's not like you can load another file manager.
Right. Or to where the free software advocates are like, we don't want you to have that, and we're going to do everything we can to make that not an option. No, screw that. if I want to bang my head into a wall, that's my business.
Yeah.
It's my head, my wall.
Right. It's my computer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make it the smartest thing to do, but let me make my own mistakes, my own decisions.
It's negative in the freedom dimension.
Okay.
So let's talk about some good news.
Okay.
AMD is moving forward with their unified Linux driver strategy that we talked about a while ago. Phoronix has been reporting on this for a little bit. So what this is going to do is it's going to you're going to see a new driver be developed for the Linux kernel, and that will be open source. And that'll mean that kernel updates and stuff like that will be a lot smoother for that kind of thing.
That's good.
And then it can connect to either the proprietary driver that runs in user space or the open source driver. You'll have kind of the option to do either or.
Okay.
They're going to converge the open source Radeon Linux driver and closed source AMD Catalyst driver to run off the same kernel driver. A slightly modified version of the existing Radeon Direct Rendering Manager driver. Both drivers would ride off the same kernel driver, while the Linux Catalyst driver would essentially become a closed-source user space blob. For open source fans, they could still use their open source Gallium 3D drivers with this open kernel driver, while those needing the best OpenGL support and performance could use the Catalyst OpenGL blob in user space.
Sounds impressive.
The good news is that AMD is going to move forward with this overall strategy, but it's going to be a transition, and only future hardware will be supported with this new driver model. I.e., now is not the time to buy an AMD graphics card because the older cards will not be supported with this new driver architecture.
Boy.
The biggest change from what was reported on earlier that we've talked about before is that they're going to actually develop an entirely new driver. There'll probably be some code from the existing stuff, but they're calling it a whole new driver. The new open source Radeon kernel driver is partially based on some of the existing DRM driver code, the Direct Rendering Manager code.
Okay.
But we don't really have an exact outline of that stuff yet.
It does feel like they're overcomplicating this. I don't know.
All new open source GPU support will be on this driver, with no new GPU support being planned for AMD's existing drivers. So if you have a current driver, you're never going to be able to use the new driver, and if you get the new driver, it won't support the old hardware.
Honest question, if you're buying a new card and you run Linux full-time, and I mean this honestly, why would you say, I'm going to get an AMD card? I don't understand what the...
Well, I mean,
in Windows, there was a fair debate. Because there were,
fans.
I used to be an AMD guy back in the day, but... and then when they bought ATI, it was kind of like,
I think when they do this, then this could be the best supported driver, because if you're going to have an open source kernel component that is going to be, essentially trouble-free.
Yeah, and you'll enjoy that support on the skeletons and body parts of all the people that bought those cards too soon that aren't supported, and you become the Terminator. I mean, you're walking around crushing skulls.
They're planning to start out the beginning stages this fall, so it's not like this is like way off. And there's new cards that are coming soon. All
right, well, then make sure to add stickers to your boxes, guys, and all the retail outlets. Hey, don't buy this card because if you run Linux, you're gonna have a bad time.
The new driver stack will also easily work with Wayland and Mir. Now, I do not know if that means the old driver stack will not easily work with Mir and Wayland, but AMD specifically said this new driver stack will include full support for those. Okay. Oh yeah, okay. So the current Catalyst closed source blob can still work with Wayland.
Well, then that's fine. I mean, as long as people aren't being completely neutered along the way. I mean, I get it. I love the idea of the blended
The thing
outfit,
is
that's cool.
I think this is a transition that has to be made, and this is the best way to do it. I think NVIDIA should take some notes. I do agree the abandoning of current generation hardware sucks, and it essentially is going to hurt their sales until they get this done. But at the same time, I guess if they could have done this from the beginning, that would have been ideal. But in a way, the open source driver project showed them how to do it right. And now they're taking those lessons learned. And I think it's a decent model because they can keep their IP locked up in this closed user space blob.
Right.
And those of us that want to use the open source driver can continue to work on that. It'll continue to be iterated.
Yeah. I mean,
and perhaps the open source driver can step up on this older hardware.
Possibly. If they can make the pivot happen to where people aren't going to... Because here's what's going to happen from a social point of view. If they do this wrong and the pivot isn't smooth between this experience...
People feel burned.
You're going to see it on the forums, and that's bad. Because those forums will actually begin ranking when people are researching, hey, what kind of AMD card should I be buying? They're going to see that in those results, and that's going to influence sales. So just something to consider.
I mean, in a few years, this won't sting as much, but it sucks
So
now.
it's about the pivot. If they can make that pivot smooth, go for it, guys.
It's funny because it seems like people at this point in time who are buying AMD cards are AMD fans, and so it's kind of funny that they're the ones that are kind of getting burned. But, it's just the way it goes.
I hope it works out, and I hope those people that are getting won't get burned. I don't know.
And there are questions, the chat room's pointing that out, of how a driver in user space will work. I am not as skeptical as the chat room is, because I think a lot of that open source driver is going to handle some of that heavy lifting and then just talking to that user space blob, but we'll see what happens there.
Could be.
Other side of the fence, Nvidia also was presenting at XDC 2014, that's where AMD was talking about, in France. The company plans to support alternative window managers beyond X11, and they were talking about that specifically at the event. They said they're working on some significant improvements to their closed source Linux driver to support both Mir and Wayland.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, we're getting some deets here, Matt, including some nice slides, huh? Look at that. NVIDIA does indeed fully support Mir and Wayland with their closed-source Linux driver. The open-source Navu driver already supports these alternative Windows systems, so if you're trying out Fedora 21 and you have an NVIDIA card and the Navu driver, you can get Wayland and GNOME working right now. Already works today. You don't have to have the Intel card anymore. And last but not least, we're not sure when NVIDIA is going to have a exact support for Mir and Wayland, but they say it's a safe bet to see it in 2015.
That's cool. And same thing applies to NVIDIA as it does to AMD. If you can make your, do a smooth pivot, make it a smooth experience for people getting this new driver, awesome.
AMD isn't totally restructuring their driver like, NVIDIA isn't totally restructuring their driver like AMD is, so they're in a little bit better position to execute on this.
And I think they're going to benefit from that. I hate to say it, but I think they might. It's hard to say.
How about some good news for the Firefox OS project? Seeing some good growth, and it's got some serious momentum. This is pretty interesting. So 3 new smartphones have been launched in India and one in Bangladesh over the last few weeks. And so now you've got even a whole new batch of phones that are available there. And they say here that Firefox OS is now available in 3 continents with 12 smartphones offered by 13 operators in 24 different countries. And they say it's the only truly open mobile operating system. Firefox OS demonstrates the versatility of the web as a platform, free of limits and restrictions associated with proprietary mobile operating systems.
That's really cool. I think it's a great concept. I really do. I like it.
They say Firefox OS gives operators more choice and empowers OEMs to deliver smartphones at more affordable prices. And Firefox OS continues to expand into key growth markets such as Asia, Central, and Latin America. It's emerged out of that other category and is now one of the top platforms for the global smartphone industry.
Yeah, I definitely, if you walk around the street just around here in Washington or anywhere in our area, you're not going to see a lot of people carrying these things, obviously. But I'm excited to see it kind of enter the market and address folks that maybe are kind of on the fence about the whole smartphone thing.
Yeah, and it totally validates the that the market wants an alternative.
They do. They really do.
So I think it's a good sign, too. And it doesn't mean bad things for Ubuntu. If anything, it means that Firefox OS is out there proving it, and there's still plenty of ground out there for everyone.
Well, and the beautiful thing about it is people that don't already have smartphones, they don't care whether it's Firefox or Ubuntu. They just, whichever one ends up in their hands, if it does the job, they're going to be excited.
Totally.
It's cool.
All right, Matt, that's all the news for this week. So how practical is an Intel NUC for your home Linux server, and how easy is it to move all of your favorite things over to a new server? I've got answers to all of those questions. How convenient that you just asked them. We'll go into my migration that I just went through this weekend, and some cool tricks that I came away with, and some new applications I've never told you about. But first, I want to thank our segment sponsor, System76.
Woo!
Creators of machines born to run Linux. Tons of great rigs over at System76.com. And man, I'll tell you, I think that Ratel performance right there would make an awesome home server box.
Definitely.
And there's some advantages not going with a NUC, and I'm going to tell you about those here in a little bit. And this would be probably a great contender, because this not only is built right there in Colorado, but this is a rig that is going to run pretty much flawless with any distro you toss on there, and that's exactly what you want. Trouble-free, set-it-and-forget-it experience with your home server, and I think the Ratel performance could be that. Leopard Extreme all the way up to the Sable Touch, depending on what your needs are. System 76 has a ton of awesome desktops and a fantastic line of Linux laptops. 1410 is just around the corner, and as soon as that thing hits the web, System 76 will be shipping systems with it because they already have it in testing. They're hooked up.
Good stuff.
Great time to get yourself Bonobo Extreme. That's my rig. Had it for a couple of years now, and I love it. System76.com. Go get yourself something nice. And tell them the Linux Action Show sent you.
Woo! Eesh.
All right, Matt. So I put an Intel NUC to the gerb. I got it from Amazon. It's the Intel NUC D54250WYKH. I got all that in the show
with that easy to remember name, I mean, everybody.
I call it the chubby NUC. It's bigger. It's fatter than your standard NUC. It's your standard NUC is about. See it? You can kind of.
It's like a NUC with love handles.
Yeah, it's got a little more girth to it. It's taller. It's about double the size of your standard NUC.
Okay.
And if you're watching the video version, I'm showing you some pictures of of it. What you get on the back is an external power supply port, display port, HDMI, gigabit Ethernet, and USB 3, plus some vents. So that's your total connectivity. Keep in mind now, this is probably a disadvantage number one. Only one NIC unless you go USB 3.0. All right, so think about that. That's something to consider. But the cool thing about this chubby NUC is it can take a standard 2.5-inch drive. So this is the bottom of the NUC. The bottom panel pulls off, and you can slide in a drive. Well, here's the great part. If you've already got a drive, you can pick up an Intel i5 NUC for $350. If you've already got the drive, RAM's cheap, you slide the drive in there, you're done. Well, I already had one. I had a 256-gigabyte SSD that I could throw in there. So I made that my OS drive, and then all my storage is on an NFS mount. And this is kind of the advantage to the chubbier NUC, because you can put a cheaper drive in there. Yeah. And then here's a shot of encoding the benchmarks that I found online that matched up my testing pretty much. So the 2.5-inch drive, it's got pretty decent performance encoding-wise. It's about middle of the road.
Okay.
So performance-wise, it's not a champion, but it's going to get the job done. In my testing, really one big HD 1080p complex high bitrate file would actually max out the NUC for a little bit, for the first few minutes while it sort of chewed through a little beginning of it.
Oh, okay.
Then it sort of calms down, but all 4 cores were totally maxed out for a little bit with just one HD stream through Plex.
But it was able to work through it. It didn't completely choke and die.
The performance on the viewing side was stellar.
Nice.
And that was with a few other things going on in the background, like BitTorrent sync and Dropbox
that's understandable.
Like that. But yeah, you can see here on this benchmark that I'll have linked to the full in the show notes. There's other NUC models out there, like Gigabyte makes one that has an i7 processor that are better machines. So this is not necessarily the best NUC out there. A, I just already had it, and B, if I was going to do a NUC, I wanted to do an Intel one and not like an OEM one.
Oh, yeah.
But there are faster, better ones out there, including that Gigabyte one that's a lot nicer. So that is the hardware that I went with. And my first inclination, was to deploy Arch Linux on it, because that's
kind of your go-to.
It's my go-to, and really what I want is current Plex, current BitTorrent sync, and a few other projects I'm going to tell you about. I want them really fresh when they come out. So I was thinking Arch Linux, and then I started thinking about that great review we had of Open Media Vault on Linux Unplugged.
Oh, right.
And I was thinking, well, this NUC could make an awesome Open Media Vault machine, and then I could talk about Open Media Vault on LAS and sort of showcase it a little bit.
Yeah.
That was probably a great idea. Probably was a great idea. However, unfortunately, Open Media Vault was a real monster to install on this.
That's too bad.
Not only did I have sometimes issues with it just not booting properly. I don't know if it was the UEFI on the NUC, and when I turned that off, it seemed to work, but then I had to go through an incantation of powering on the NUC, putting in the USB stick at the right time, hitting the boot menu.
Geez.
Then I would get Grub, and then as soon as I got into Grub, my Logitech keyboard quit working. And the only other wired keyboard I had around the house was my wife's iMac keyboard. So I went up and took my wife's iMac keyboard while she was in the shower and plugged it into the NUC so I could finish the installation. And then, of course, before the install was over, she's like, where's my keyboard? I'm like, oh, bring it up, sweetie. I'm sorry. That was all good. The problem is, after I got through the installation, which is an ncurses-based installation, pretty straightforward, it didn't support the DisplayPort on the NUC. I don't know if it was sending video out the HDMI. I didn't have an HDMI, because the NUC has mini HDMI. It's DisplayPort or mini HDMI, and it wasn't sending any signal out DisplayPort. That was the only connection I had. And unfortunately, from what I could tell, it appears to disable SSH at boot. And I hadn't finished the user setup wizard, so I didn't have an account to manage through the web interface. So it took a couple of hours to get that far.
Right.
I just sort of bailed and decided to go the Arch route.
Oh, I would too.
But I did want to give it a shot, and I think the Intel NUC would be right. I think if I had a more standard PC, I think it probably would have been fine.
Like the retail performance, that probably would be something that would be perfect.
Right,
for it.
and something that maybe wasn't using DisplayPort and didn't have like all this crazy boot features and stuff like that. Just something that was just a great, straightforward PC, and I think that would have been fine for Open Media Vault. So I went Arch, and once I got that up and running, my task really became, how do I migrate my Plex installation from my existing Ubuntu machine over to my new Arch NUC machine? And I don't want to lose any of my library stuff. And this is always something I've worried about. Like, I have all of my media backed up on it's stored on a Synology RAID. But the Plex front end, I was always worried about. I wasn't worried about losing the media, but when that Dell XPS 410 dies, because the power supply is grinding like a crazy man right now, when that dies, what happens to all my Plex stuff, right?
What happens to all that data?
Yeah. So I looked in how do you move Plex, and it's actually pretty straightforward. The first thing you need to do is you set up NFS on your new server and make sure your UIDs all match up so that way the user that's accessing your NFS share matches the permissions on your NFS server. I used on my NUC, I've mentioned this before in a previous show, in FS tab, you can actually use systemd to mount the NFS share.
Right.
And what's great about that is it's network aware, so if connectivity goes away and comes back, systemd will remount that NFS mount for you, which is good since
that's
so
a
many
nice
services
benefit.
run
Just kind
off
of handles
that.
it. Yeah, sure.
So here's the order of operation. And by the way, all of that I just mentioned, the NFS stuff and systemd, all of that is in the show notes. So
you're not going to have to try and remember all this stuff he's explaining.
Right.
Just
links
boop,
to everything
boom,
I've talked about
done.
so far, specs of everything I've talked about, benchmarks, all of that's in the show notes. You guys can read that in more detail if you're interested, and including the how to mount an NFS share in FS tab using systemd, which is definitely the way I'd recommend going about it. Now,
definitely.
Here's how you move, and all this is outlined in the show notes too. Here's how you move your Plex installation. It's crazy easy. You stop your Plex server on your current Plex box. Then you go in and you find your config. On my Ubuntu box, I think it was in var lib library / application support / Plex media server. Like it's this really crazy.
And then with
path.
the Arch distros, of course, it's in something
It's
completely
like opt.
different.
It's like in Arch it's opt Plex.
Yeah, it's something.
Library application support Plex media server. The best way to do is just do a search on your box for Plex media server. But I have the path in the show notes as well. You copy that all up. You do not need your cache or your plugins folder. So what I did is I went in there and I did a tar.gz and I excluded cache and plugins. I moved that tar.gz file over to my new Plex server where I just installed Plex, but I hadn't started it yet. Plex, so the software is installed, all of the directories were generated, but I didn't start the Plex media server.
Right.
I then extracted that tar.gz file in the correct location, which is in the show notes.
Okay.
Set all of the permissions to be owned by Plex, both user and group of everything
important.
I just extracted.
That's a big one most people miss.
Right? And then you fire up your Plex server, and Plex will start, and it'll have all of the configuration of your past Plex server. It's a matter of picking up that Plex media server folder that's in the Plex application support directory, moving that over to your new server, setting the permissions correctly, and then starting the Plex instance, and it will look at all of that. You'll have to go into Plex and rename your server to your new name because it'll still have your old server name. And then you can go to your Roku, you hit Auto Discover, and all of your Roku devices will see it, or whatever you're using to connect to Plex, and you're done.
And I believe that we'll even remember like partially watched programming, things like that. It should.
Yes, sir.
Yep, it should take care of that for you.
And I have links to that in a little more detail in the show notes. Then I decided to set up something new. We've talked about Sick Beard before on the show. Does that ring a bell to you, Matt?
Yes, it does. Yes,
Sick
it does.
Beard is
Very
a
popular
program that a lot of cord cutters use.
Yep.
And I use it for different purposes, but a lot of cord cutters use it to sort of automatically download TV shows.
Yeah, that's kind of their thing.
Yep. But we also use it to just make digital editions of the content that we already own. However, Sickbeard is great, and I still think it's a great product, a great project.
Sure.
It hasn't gotten some new needed features, though. So a fork has emerged, and it's one that I don't know if a lot of you know about. It's called Sick Rage.
No, I've not heard of that.
Sick Rage is it has an entirely new UI, an entirely new management system. It's a lot more intelligent. It has better searching, and it also has like broken out support for anime and things like that. It's a continuation of Sickbeard, but made so much better. So this would be, now this is all for demonstration purposes here. This isn't a live feed, but this would be like all of the shows that you wanted to back up off of the internet. And they're sort of displayed to you in a very nice display here with the cover art and all of these things. So we were talking earlier about Scorpion, right? So here's the show Scorpion. It gives you the information about the show, when it airs, the size it's taking, and then here's the Season 1 lineup of the episodes that have aired, the ones that haven't aired, and if the ones that have aired, you can click to download them right there. It'll go out and it'll search Usenet for you, and then it'll initiate the download on like a SAB NZB server. And so you can see here, like here's another one, Halt and Catch Fire. It's a kind of a good Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And you can see here it's laid out all of the episodes it has found, which ones have been downloaded, which ones haven't. And you can manage all of it right here. And you can add new search providers. It's very cool because it ties in then with the API to SAB NZB, and it starts the downloads, extracts them, and moves them to the Plex server's content directory automatically.
I like it. I like the interface, and and of course it's less beard, more rage. I kind of like that too.
And it's something that it could empower piracy, but also if you have these things and you just want a digital version of it, it could be just a very straightforward for you to get backups without having you to rip disk after disk.
And of course, whether you own it or not, anytime you're doing any downloading of content, be aware of the laws in your area.
So that's Sick Rage, and we'll have a link to the GitHub page where you can check it out. I think it's also, it is in the AUR. It's like Sick Rage -git.
And it seems like it would be pretty straightforward to use.
And it'll integrate with XBMC if you're an XBMC. Don't have to be a Plex user. Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of cool. And the integration is always a tight thing.
Yeah, it's really cool. I really like it a lot. I really like it. Okay.
I really like it.
I really like it, Matt. And some of this stuff is hard to demonstrate for you since I set it up at my house, but the next one that I was worried about was moving over my BitTorrent sync installation. So we distribute a lot of content to the Unfilter supporters through BitTorrent. I also have some of my personal media production stuff distributed through BitTorrent. So I wanted to move this without screwing everybody up. Like I didn't want to make everybody resync.
Yeah, here's your new code.
Right, yeah. Or I have to give everybody a new key. And I didn't quite know how to do this. And it turns out to be a little trickier than I expected because I didn't see any official documentation on how you move BitTorrent.
I never could find it. I always just do new keys.
So here's what you do. Go into your BitTorrent sync installation, copy down all of the paths and the keys that you're currently using, the full access keys.
Okay.
Get all of that written down ahead of time. Put it in a spreadsheet or something like that. Shut down BitTorrent sync on your old system. And I want to stop, I want to pause right here, and I want to say that one thing to keep in mind that's really important is my setup is BitTorrent sync is running on a front-end box, syncing to directories on an NFS share. My new server comes in, I just reconnect to that same NFS share, I use all of the same file paths, everything like that, and I start up BitTorrent sync on the new server. But it's not aware of all of the keys and all of the folders over there. Right. So you go into that new installation of BitTorrent sync, you add the folders, you go, one more thing, all this is outlined in the show notes too. Before you start up the new BitTorrent sync installation, go into your old sync folders and remove .sync and any like sync archive folders, or back them up first and take them out. Otherwise, you might get an error message when BitTorrent sync says, "Do you want me to take ownership of this folder?" You can say yes, and that essentially does that same thing. So you add a folder to BitTorrent sync, then you go edit it and you change the key. You go, and then when you update, quote unquote, you update the key, and there's a little link that says view key, and then you click view key and you say update key. You put the old access key in there, the full access key that you wrote down from your old installation. You say update, and then it'll start reconnecting with all the old peers.
Nice.
The folder will not reconnect with the old peers until you update it with the old full access key.
So you can, in fact, use that previous key, just view key.
Apparently so. It's working for me right now. I wasn't totally
That's
sure.
Really cool.
Yeah, and so you can see, if you're watching the video version here, what's great is all of the file paths across servers are the same. Mount, NFS, BitTorrent sync, jb.production, unfilter, supporter show. And that's the same path on my new server and my old server, and any other server I put up in front of my NFS Synology.
I got to tell you, I think when migration comes into play in a situation like this, having it on NFS makes a lot of sense because you're not having to dink with paths. You're not like, oh crap, I forgot to update that or change this, or
So now, now I've got BitTorrent sync shut down on the old server. It's spun up on the new server, and it's seeding all of that same stuff, and no keys had to change on anybody's end. And I wrote down my step-by-step process in the show notes if you get to that point. Because I did not see any other guides on how to do
I mean, because you think about it, and I've had people ask me that. It's like, I can't get it to work now.
And you get all in on a technology like that, and then you realize, oh, wait a minute. What if I have to move this? That's going to be a problem. All right. Now we got to talk about SmokePing. This is an essential tool that I really recommend you get. It's just such a pain in the ass to set up. And if you don't remember SmokePing, we've talked about it before. It's software that you run on. It's a CGI app that you run on your server, and you give it a set of targets to probe, and it monitors your connectivity and charts it out over the last 30 seconds, 10 minutes, 3 hours, 3 weeks, 3 months, year, etc. And you can use that to get data. Now, if you're a business, this is a no-brainer. But like even me, I'm our ISP, Frontier, and Comcast at the studio are both just being a bunch of jerks. Like the connectivity is sucking hard these days. And these charts give me the proof. And what's great is I can compare now locations. And SmokePing it's one of these amazing tools that you set it up and then you forget about it, and it runs and runs and runs. And then over about a year, you get this incredible amount of data about the performance of your ISP. And if they're legitimately investing in their infrastructure, and if they're failing to invest in their infrastructure, these charts expose it every single time. Nice. And I tell you right now, Frontier is having more lag than they have had in the last year. In the last 10 days, we have seen more trouble on the Frontier network than we have seen in the last year. And I know that for a fact because I actually have the data from SmokePing.
I've experienced that myself. I mean, it got so bad to where I've got my router just set up to VPN because it's like I need to bypass whatever their breakdown is and just skip right over it.
So SmokePing is pretty easy to set up in Ubuntu. You get a Debian file. It sets up your init scripts. It's pretty easy. SmokePing and Arch is a monster, and mostly because the Arch wiki's like, yes. So here's the thing, SmokePing uses Speedy CGI. Speedy CGI is a modified version of Perl that allows scripts to run persistently. But Speedy CGI hasn't been updated since 2003.
Oh, jeez.
And so we're not going to let you deploy that. So here's what you need to do. You need to convert it to a PSGI script. And then they walk you through all of the stuff you have to install to do that. Downloading the project, converting it, going through, running sed at it, and changing things, wrapping it in a new CGI. You could totally do all of that if you want to.
This reminds me of power management.
I'm not going to judge you. I was looking at that. I started that process, and I was like, nah, I am not going through this. It honestly, I got to about the 35-minute mark, and I thought, not doing this. There's got to be a better way. It's obvious, too. And I'm going to use this for a ton of stuff on my home server.
It's Docker. My
Docker.
God.
I installed Docker, and it's crazy easy to get going. You know, it's just a pacman-s Docker, and Docker has a lot of easy, ready-to-go images that the community has created, and one of them is a SmokePing Docker image, which is great because you don't have to be on Arch, you don't have to be on Ubuntu. Anything that runs Docker can run SmokePing, and this SmokePing setup is crazy dead simple. So I'll show it to you, actually, because it's so easy we can do it right now on air. So I'll pull up this guy here.
Isn't that crazy? Like how something is just like snap. Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Oh, I know for sure. So I'm SSH'd into one of our servers here, and I just recently issued the command docker pull dpersons/smokeping. That's his image. I've already done that. I just did that part to save us time. So now that so you do that, it'll go down. It'll pull down the Docker image. It'll create the file system, and then you just run the instance. And this is the command right here. So I'm already in as root. So now that I have, that was my Docker command. Here's my run command: Docker run name, and I name the instance. I'm going to bind port 8000 to 80. So I'm going to visit port 8000 in my browser, and Docker is going to direct that to 80 in the Docker container.
Got it.
Okay, so now it's started up, and if I do a Docker PS, you can see that container is running. So now I should, and let me make sure I get my servers. I think it's 14. So now I should be able to go to 10.1.10.14 in my web browser. Let's give that a try. So we'll go to http:/10.1.10.14, and I think then I go to /smokeping. I might, no, and then I think maybe /smokeping/CGI. /smokeping.cgi. Now it's something like that. But that is the, I don't have the, I should have written down the exact URL you visit, but
that will then bring up the actual situation.
Yeah. Okay. So it's, you go to, I didn't put :8000 in there. That's why.
Oh, yeah.
So you go to, so I'm going to go to 10.1.10.14 :8000 because Docker is doing the redirect. So there we go. And then it's /smokeping/smokeping.cgi.
Oh, no. Yep.
Well, maybe. Oh. And my URL foo is weak today. And so it just did a Google search. All right, so now I'll put it in there. And there we go.
There we go.
So if you, so actually the longest thing in this process was me typing the URL. Really, like if you have Docker installed, or in Docker is a very quick installation, and you pull it down and then you issue the start command, the longest thing in this process was me getting the URL correct. Wow. Now I have Docker up and running on our Arch server here in the studio, and now I have to make a copy of it to go in and tweak the config and all of that, but it's ready to go. And it's using an Ubuntu 12.04 base, a very, 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 very minimal Ubuntu 12.04 base.
But you're still running
in that container.
Yeah, that's cool, because you're still able to use the OS you want to, or the distro you want to. You're not bound to going to one way or the other.
So I have an Arch host with an Ubuntu 12.04 Docker container that's running SmokePing, already set up and configured for me. And SmokePing is such a vital tool for me that's a massive win. And I'll just deploy future stuff through Docker that it has troubles like that as well.
Oh, it's really interesting because it's like you can look at a configuration page and you can be like, yeah, I'm going to go Docker. I mean, pretty much with anything, it doesn't matter.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So I'll have links and with more information on all of that And I'll try out new things in Docker and kind of give you guys updates on how that goes, like maybe a mail server, stuff like that. All links to things covered in there, including some additional information on how the NUC does power usage-wise when it's idle versus encoding video. And that is one area where it does really well. So, for example, in the benchmark where Prime 95 was thrown at it and Future Mark, it was only pulling down 27 watts, 27.48 watts, versus like the Gigabyte, which is pulling down 88 watts.
That's a difference.
So yeah, it didn't have the fastest decoding, and yeah, it seemed like I was pushing it when we were really watching some thick HD content. But that doesn't happen more than usually once or twice at the same time in the house, and the lower power consumption and the low noise. Once you're about 3 feet away from it, you don't even hear the NUC.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you know, combined with the lightweight Arch installation that's supplemented by Docker, it's actually a pretty decent setup.
So it sounds like as long as it's not actually having a hiccup to where it's coming to a complete stop, that's,
I'm going to continue to test the performance of it, and I'll update you guys in the future if in a couple of weeks I feel like, yeah, well, you know, the Usenet server was really busy and BitTorrent sync was going because we just released Unfilter, and then we went to start a movie and it just totally lagged out. Like, if those things start to happen, I'll report back. But so far, I think we're going to be okay. And so it means I just have this tiny footprint server running all this stuff. It's pretty great.
Nice.
So I think I give it a tacit approval. But if you have a lot of performance demands, you might either look at the Gigabyte model or step up to a full PC like the Ratel Performance or something equivalent to that from Dell or whoever that would match that in specs. And maybe get like a full i7 in there and stuff.
Sounds like if you're basically wanting to go like, I don't want to screw with it, I want it to be simple and easy. Obviously, Docker's the software side of things, the direction you want to go. But it sounds like as far as hardware is going, you might want to just go with a full setup. I mean,
maybe.
Depending on how comfortable you are and whatever.
For me, the bigger priority was low power, low profile, and low noise. And so I made the NUC work.
Right.
And if you're willing to make the NUC work and fiddle with it a little bit, I think it'll be a great system for you. Yeah, I think it works really well. So there you go. That's the Linux Action Show's take on the NUC as a home server. And that brings us to the end of this week's broadcast. Hey, Matt, before we get out of here, though, we got a little live feedback right here. Some shenanigans going down, Google Hangout style. Hey, guys, welcome to the show. And I see Popey's face right there, but Seth, you're still there, right?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, good. All right, Seth. I know you. I wanted to start with just a topic for our panel. Seth, do you think that Linux users are just all in with DRM now? Was I right that we've just kind of given up the fight and we're just accepting it now?
Are you insane? I mean, you should see my Plex, my actual Plex shares on my NAS. No. People go for whatever is practical and easy, and DRM is fundamentally evil and must be destroyed.
Well, all right. So if this is the case, then why are Linux users all down with it?
Because the barriers to actually using DRM-enabled stuff have been coming down slowly for Linux.
So now it's less.
So availability breeds, adoption.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah, it was harder. All right, Popey, what do you think? Are you all in with DRM?
I don't like it, but there's not a lot I can do about it. And if I want to watch the content that I want to watch, then I've got to go where the content is, or do something nefarious like pirate it. And I'd rather not pirate it.
All right, you see, this is live. It's great.
Yeah, we caught that.
Does anybody else want to raise their hand and state their?
The other thing is, you don't have to watch it. You can choose not to use it.
Exactly.
If you don't want to.
Hey, is anybody in here taking that stance though? No. See, I don't think so.
That would be me, actually. Like, I punish people who don't make content that I want available in ways that I want available by pirating it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Civil disobedience, as it were.
Yeah, there you go.
Right? An act of civil disobedience. All right, guys. Well, stick around. We'll chat more after the show. But I think that was fun since I didn't have a chance to grab emails today. Thanks. You guys stay there, and we'll have some post-show chats, too. All right, Matt. Hey, we do have a couple other things to talk about before we go.
Good.
The one thing is that the Oculus subreddit, Oculus Rift subreddit, is taking on their own challenge to help get the Oculus Rift working under Linux. And they're actually making some decent progress. If you're interested in that at all, I have a link in the show notes. You guys know I bought the Oculus DK2 because it specifically said Linux support, and yet there has been no Linux support since I bought it. If you'd like to help make a change there, I have a link to that in the show notes.
Good to know.
Also, check out the Instagram feed for Jupiter Broadcasting as all of these jackets are coming in. We're starting to post the pictures of folks' Linux Action Show fall jacket. Adorableness.
That's cute.
Also, some weirdness.
That is actually really cool. The cat people like the coat. So.
Yeah, for sure. The cat loves that coat. That's so those are starting to get posted. Okay, now, I want to take a second and admire this shot.
That is awesome on so many levels.
Dude's got the TechSnap 100 shirt on, sipping from a Tech Talk Today mug, wearing his Linux Action Show jacket.
Wow. That's off the
intense
chain.
Right there.
I like it.
So check out Instagram.com/Jupiter Broadcasting, including we have pictures of the Ohio Linux Fest stickers that we'll be giving out to folks who meet us at Ohio Linux Fest. They turned out really great. I've got one right here. And all kinds of stuff at Jupiter Broadcasting, Instagram.com/Jupiter Broadcasting. Also, Linux Unplugged on Tuesdays. Woo! Great show. We got into some of the recent community drama that's going on, and I think we walked away feeling a little bit better about the whole thing.
Yeah, a little bumpy at first, but I feel like we actually made progress.
Yeah.
And that's cool.
Yeah. And, of course, you can always check out Matt's writing over at datamation.com.
Yep, stuff over there.
Got an article about XFCE if you're an XFCE user.
Is it time to replace it or not?
Stroking of the beard
Exactly.
commences. All right, don't forget you can join us live, jblive.tv, Sunday at 10 a.m. Pacific. You can go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar and get that converted in your own time zone. Also, you can help make our show even better. Give us your insights, suggest content, submission for Runs Linux or desktop picks at linuxactionshow.reddit.com. It's our growing community of a bunch, really, I think, maybe the best folks in the Linux community over there.
Yeah,
I think they all just found each other.
That's true.
Kumbaya. Also, you can go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact and send in your emails to the show. Normally, I try to get them in every single week, but I was playing Borderlands 2 this morning.
Yeah. It's a
And
good time
playing
for that.
and playing with Docker. And a
little bit of Docker in there. Some Borderland Docker action.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. We'll see you right back here next week.
Yeah.
All right, Matt. Gird your loins. It is time for us to do a segment.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, it's new mic.
Oh, yeah. You don't want to stick that in your mouth.
No, my PR40 tastes way better.
Wow. That's woo! Way to work the girth there. All right. Oh, boy. Can't unhear that.
You know,
is Popey like the new Kenny?
No, you know what's funny about it is, like, I'm sitting here giving him shit about stealing all the loot, and then I'm the one that wandered off and got loot, and he dies both times.
Oh, jeez.
I'm sorry, Popey. I'm coming.
Taking one for the team.
I'm coming, Popey. I'm coming. Once I get done, wait, did you just get up? Did you just get up after I went all that? Oh my! You could have at least just stayed down for me.